The greatest enemy of the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation did not hide in the dense jungles of South America. He did not operate from a heavily fortified cartel compound in Sinaloa. He sat right inside a highly secured office of the Drug Enforcement Administration. He was a sworn federal agent, a man entrusted with the highest level of classified clearance. But behind the badge and the patriotic facade was a mastermind who orchestrated one of the most catastrophic betrayals in the history of American law enforcement. He did not just leak sensitive intelligence. He actively weaponized a multi-billion-dollar drug cartel, transforming them into an invisible paramilitary force, capable of neutralizing any threat. How does a single man, operating at the absolute pinnacle of federal law enforcement, manipulate the two most powerful intelligence agencies on the planet for an entire decade? How did he systematically blind the FBI while building an untouchable empire for the most ruthless drug lords in the world? The answers lie deep within a highly classified dossier that the government fought desperately to keep buried. Welcome to the dark reality of the shadow broker. For decades, the war on drugs has been a bloody, relentless, and unforgiving meat grinder. Billions of taxpayer dollars poured into a global crusade to dismantle narco-empires. The FBI and the DEA were supposed to be the twin pillars of this crusade, working side by side to crush the cartels. But behind closed doors, a bitter and toxic rivalry poisoned their relationship. The DEA believed they were the true kings of the narcotics battlefield, viewing the FBI as arrogant trespassers. The FBI, on the other hand, saw the DEA as reckless cowboys, lacking tactical finesse. This deeply entrenched interagency hatred was a known flaw in the system, but no one ever imagined that a single DEA agent would exploit this exact flaw to orchestrate the ultimate sabotage. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the FBI launched a series of massive, multi-million-dollar sting operations aimed at the heart of the South American cartels. They had satellite tracking, wiretaps, and a network of highly placed informants. It was an airtight strategy, or so they thought. Every time the FBI tactical teams breached a target location, they found nothing but empty rooms and cold coffee. High-value targets vanished into thin air, just minutes before the strike. Millions of dollars in illicit cash were moved out the back door, while federal agents were busy breaking down the front. The precision of these escapes was terrifying. It was not luck. It was not a coincidence. The cartel had a ghost in the machine. The FBI leadership quickly realized they were dealing with a catastrophic intelligence leak. But they were looking in all the wrong places. They hunted for hackers penetrating their mainframes. They interrogated their own tactical teams. They aggressively vetted their confidential informants. And yet, the invisible shield protecting the cartel remained perfectly intact. The truth was far more insidious. The mole was not breaking into the FBI database. He was walking right through the front door, operating under the guise of an elite DEA operative. This shadow broker used his top-secret security clearance to access interagency task force briefings. He sat at the very same tables where the FBI planned their raids. He drank coffee with the agents he was about to betray. He memorized operational timelines, tactical maps, and informant identities. And then, he walked out and picked up a secure line to the underworld. But he did not just pass along information. He weaponized the bureaucracy of the United States government against itself. Using the DEA's immense jurisdictional power, he actively sabotaged FBI investigations under the pretext of protecting his own agency's undercover operations. When the FBI closed in on a vital cartel lieutenant, this agent would instantly flag that criminal as a crucial, protected DEA asset. He legally banned the FBI from touching the very men they were hunting. He threw up bureaucratic brick walls, filing fake reports and classified injunctions that tied the hands of federal prosecutors. He manipulated the legal system to grant functional immunity to the most dangerous men on Earth. The sheer arrogance of his operation was staggering. He did not view himself as a criminal. He saw himself as a god of the intelligence world, playing a grand game of chess where the DEA and the FBI were nothing more than his personal pawns. He thrived on the adrenaline of the double life, relishing the absolute power he held over the life and death of both federal agents and cartel enforcers. When an informant threatened to expose the pipeline, their heavily redacted files miraculously found their way to the cartel's hitmen. The bodies of those brave enough to speak out began turning up in the streets, silenced before they could ever reach an FBI safe house. The Bureau was bleeding intelligence, and their sources were being systematically eradicated. And still, the shadow broker remained entirely invisible, hiding behind a badge that shielded him from any suspicion. As the bodies piled up, the FBI fell into a state of severe paranoia. Agents stopped trusting each other. Interagency communication completely broke down. The shadow broker had successfully paralyzed the American justice system by turning its own defenders against one another. He watched the chaos unfold from his secure desk, completely untouched by the carnage he had unleashed. But simple survival was never going to be enough for a man of his staggering ambition. Supplying information was only the beginning of his dark contract. The cartel was paying him millions, but they demanded more than just an early warning system. They wanted dominance. They wanted absolute supremacy over their rivals and the law. And this rogue agent was uniquely positioned to give them exactly what they desired. He realized that the true currency of the modern underworld was not just cocaine or cash. It was technology. It was militarized capability. And so, the shadow broker evolved. He transitioned from being a mere informant to becoming the cartel's chief procurement officer for military-grade hardware. He was about to give the deadliest criminals on Earth the exact same tools used by the United States military. And the FBI was completely unprepared for the bloodbath that was about to follow. The transition from a corrupt informant to a shadow quartermaster was a calculated evolution. The sheer scale of his treason was unprecedented in the history of American intelligence. He did not accept his massive payouts in briefcases of dirty cash passed under a table in some dark alley. That was far too amateurish for a man of his intellect and position. The cartel compensated him by funding an invisible supply chain of geopolitical proportions. Working under the completely legitimate cover of outfitting DEA undercover task forces and building secure communication networks for federal agents in foreign territories. The shadow broker began siphoning top-tier government technology directly into the bleeding hands of the cartel. He officially became the ultimate procurement officer for a transnational criminal army. He smuggled out state-of-the-art surveillance software. This was the exact same digital architecture originally designed by the National Security Agency to track global terrorists across the Middle East. He provided the drug lords with military-grade encryption devices. This catastrophic transfer of technology ensured that no local police force, no border patrol unit, and no federal wiretap could ever listen in on their logistical operations. But the betrayal did not stop at digital espionage and signal intelligence. He facilitated the massive transfer of heavy weaponry through black market channels he was supposed to be shutting down. Night vision goggles, thermal imaging drones, high-powered armor-piercing ammunition, advanced body armor. He was outfitting the cartel assassins with the exact same tactical gear used by the elite hostage rescue teams of the FBI. The narco-traffickers were no longer just a disorganized gang of street thugs firing blindly into the night. Because of one single DEA agent, they had rapidly evolved into a highly disciplined, technologically supreme paramilitary organization capable of waging actual warfare against the United States government. The terrifying reality of this artificial upgrade became brutally apparent during a fateful night raid that would forever haunt the Bureau. The FBI had finally tracked a massive, multi-ton shipment of narcotics and a remarkably high-ranking cartel lieutenant to an isolated, heavily fortified warehouse complex right on the border. The interdiction operation was planned with absolute surgical precision. Dozens of tactical teams mobilized in total silence under the cover of a moonless night. Expert snipers took their elevated positions, dialing in their scopes on all possible exit routes. The breach was supposed to be swift, overwhelming, and completely absolute. But as the heavily armored FBI assault vehicles rolled silently toward the perimeter of the compound, they were actually driving straight into a meticulously prepared slaughterhouse. The cartel soldiers waiting inside that warehouse were not panicking. They were not scrambling in the dark. They were perfectly calm. They were wearing advanced tactical gear, identical to the men coming to kill them. They possessed thermal optics that allowed them to clearly see the federal agents approaching through the pitch black darkness, their body heat glowing bright white through the concrete walls. More horrifyingly, they were actively listening to the encrypted radio frequencies of the FBI strike team. They knew exactly where the perimeter snipers were stationed. They knew the precise locations of the breach points. They knew the exact microsecond the final assault command would be given. As the FBI operators aggressively kicked down the reinforced steel doors, they were instantly met with a devastating, coordinated wall of armor, piercing, suppressing fire. The elite hunters had officially become the hunted. The federal raid immediately devolved into an absolute nightmarish bloodbath. Veteran agents were hopelessly pinned down, fighting desperately for their lives against an enemy that anticipated their every single tactical maneuver. The precision of the cartel defense was highly unnatural. It was statistically impossible for a regional drug ring to possess this extreme level of military sophistication unless they were being actively guided by a trained professional. And they absolutely were. Hundreds of miles away from the chaos and the gunfire, sitting very comfortably in a brightly lit, climate-controlled DEA command center, the shadow broker was watching the entire nightmare unfold live on his highly secure federal monitors. He had full, unrestricted access to the live global positioning system tracking data of every single FBI vehicle and undercover agent deployed in the field that night. He was calmly looking at the digital, glowing map of the battlefield in real time. And he was not using this God-eye view to help his dying fellow law enforcement officers. He was using a secure, untraceable satellite phone to directly guide the cartel lieutenant through a hidden subterranean escape route. He watched the glowing blue dots representing the pinned-down FBI agents on his screen, while he actively steered the high-value cartel target safely away from the closing containment perimeter. He coldly and systematically orchestrated the tactical defeat of his own countrymen, simply to protect his illicit financial investment. The surviving FBI task force eventually secured the blood-stained warehouse, but the operational cost was astronomical. The primary target was completely gone. The multi-million-dollar narcotics shipment had vanished into the desert, and the Bureau was left staring at the terrifying, undeniable reality that the cartel was now operating with government-level tactical supremacy. The traumatic aftermath of the botched raid sent violent shockwaves through the absolute highest levels of the Department of Justice in Washington. The director of the FBI ordered a complete and total lockdown of all operational intelligence across the entire country. Trust was completely shattered. No one was safe. The Bureau finally realized they were fighting an invisible ghost who possessed the master keys to their entire kingdom. But the shadow broker remained completely unfazed by the escalating internal panic sweeping through the intelligence community. He truly believed he had engineered a flawless, unbreakable system. He had successfully manipulated the massive bureaucratic blind spots between the DEA and the FBI, creating an impenetrable fortress of lies and misdirection. He felt entirely invincible. He was pulling the deadly strings of the global drug trade while hiding comfortably behind the absolute, unquestionable protection of a federal gold badge. He had systematically outsmarted the greatest criminal investigators in the world. He had built an untouchable criminal empire that was completely invisible to the naked eye. Yet, the fatal flaw in any criminal mastermind is always extreme hubris. The shadow broker genuinely believed his digital footprints were completely erased from the government servers. He believed his offshore accounts were perfectly hidden behind infinite layers of complex shell companies. He believed he was a phantom, but he vastly underestimated the sheer, relentless, vengeful paranoia of a humiliated FBI. When you back a wounded apex predator into a corner, it immediately stops playing by the traditional rules of engagement. The Bureau stopped looking for a leak in the dangerous streets of the cartel territories. They turned their crosshairs entirely inward, aiming directly at the federal government itself. They quietly unleashed a deeply classified counterintelligence unit, a phantom team of ruthless cyber-espionage experts whose very existence was not even known to the DEA leadership. The ultimate high-stakes game of cat and mouse was about to begin. Not in the humid jungles or the bullet-ridden safe houses, but in the silent, invisible, and unforgiving warfare of highly classified government mainframes. And the brilliant shadow broker was about to make the one single, microscopic mistake that would bring his entire bloody empire crashing violently down to earth. The most pressing question surrounding the shadow broker was never just about how he leaked the classified intelligence. It was about the staggering, astronomical fortune he amassed. Where exactly does a federal employee hide tens of millions of dollars in illicit blood money without triggering every single financial alarm inside the Internal Revenue Service and the FBI? The answer is a masterpiece of financial deception. He did not bury pallets of cash in the desert. He did not use predictable offshore bank accounts in Switzerland or the Cayman Islands. He laundered the cartel's dirty money in plain sight, using a method so brilliantly twisted it almost defies belief. He funneled the cartel payouts through a highly complex network of domestic shell companies, registered as private military defense contractors. These ghost corporations then bid on and won legitimate federal supply contracts. The United States government was literally writing clean, untraceable taxpayer checks to the very same shell companies that were washing the cartel's drug money. It was the ultimate financial paradox. The American justice system was unknowingly funding its own catastrophic betrayal. This invisible financial loop made him untouchable. He was a ghost, living a life of extreme, hidden luxury, perfectly insulated by layers of corporate bureaucracy and government red tape. But ghosts do not leave digital footprints. And the shadow broker, despite his absolute genius, was fundamentally tethered to the very digital infrastructure he was exploiting. The catastrophic downfall of his entire criminal empire did not begin with a bloody shootout on the streets of a border town. It did not start with a cartel informant flipping under the intense pressure of a federal interrogation. It began with a microscopic, seemingly insignificant anomaly, buried deep inside a highly classified FBI server log. The highly secretive FBI Cyber Counterintelligence Unit, operating entirely in the shadows, had laid a digital trap. They deliberately created a radioactive phantom file. This was a highly classified, completely fabricated intelligence dossier, containing irresistible bait about a massive impending raid on the cartel's highest-ranking leadership. The file was securely locked behind multiple layers of encryption, placed on a restricted interagency server that only a handful of top-tier executives could ever access. And then, the FBI cyber hunters simply waited in the dark. They watched the digital tripwires for weeks. The tension inside the cyber command center was suffocating. If the mole did not bite, the entire federal counterintelligence operation would collapse. Then, at exactly 2 a.m. on a Sunday, the silent alarm was finally triggered. Someone, using a highly classified DEA credential, bypassed the first security protocol. The FBI cyber team watched in real time as the unauthorized user systematically picked the digital locks, moving deeper into the restricted server. A high-stakes, invisible game of cyber-espionage was unfolding silently across the secure government mainframes. The intruder believed he was cloaked behind an untraceable virtual private network. But the FBI had secretly engineered the phantom file to act as a digital homing beacon. The exact second the shadow broker downloaded the heavily encrypted document, a microscopic, deeply embedded tracking algorithm silently attached itself to his digital signature. The hunter had finally become the hunted. The FBI did not instantly kick down his door. They patiently tracked the digital beacon as it bounced across multiple encrypted servers worldwide, tracing it all the way back to a very specific, highly secure DEA field office computer. The undeniable, terrifying truth was instantly verified. The cartel's greatest asset was not a faceless hacker. It was a decorated federal agent sitting at a government desk. The final takedown of the shadow broker was not a cinematic, explosive raid. It was chillingly quiet. A specialized team of heavily armed FBI internal affairs agents calmly walked into the DEA headquarters. They bypassed the heavily guarded lobby, stepped into the elevator, and walked directly to his cubicle. Before he could even reach for his service weapon or press a single delete key on his keyboard, federal handcuffs were securely locked around his wrists. The untouchable ghost had been permanently grounded by the very same digital surveillance state he had so brilliantly weaponized. The arrest of the Shadow Broker sent apocalyptic shockwaves through the entire global intelligence community. It fundamentally shattered the deeply held illusion of absolute federal security. If a single, highly cleared individual could manipulate the DEA and the FBI into a blind, bloody war against each other for an entire decade, then the most terrifying threat to national security does not come from foreign adversaries or heavily armed drug cartels. The most dangerous loophole in the entire global defense infrastructure is, and always will be, the infinite, unquenchable depth of human greed. It forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. If this happened once, right under the noses of the greatest investigators on the planet, then who is truly manipulating the system right now? Who is sitting in the dark, holding the strings of power, watching us fight a war that is already lost? To uncover more highly classified secrets and shocking government cover-ups, you must subscribe to Shadow Dossier right now. Do not miss our next explosive investigation, because the truth they are hiding is far more terrifying than the lies you have been told.